Oh, why didn't I come up? I should have came up there. Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 23rd of March, 2025. Just realised it's a month to go to my birthday, believe it or not, when I'm 25 once again. How are we all doing today? Lovely to see you here. Hope you're having a great week. It's been nice. We are officially into spring, and we've had some really nice weather. Weekend's been a bit crap, but we have had some nice weather throughout the week. Now, tonight we are going to be talking about straw bale gardening. And if you don't know what straw bale gardening is, it's simply the method of gardening in which you plant your plants into straw bales. It sounds pretty simple, but there's a bit more to it. I tried doing it a couple of years ago, didn't quite work, didn't quite get it right. But I'm looking at doing it again this year because I've learned from my mistakes. So my first question that I'm going to ask everybody in the audience to share is, have you ever done straw bale gardening before, or are you looking at doing straw bale gardening this year? While you answer that, let's see if we've got anybody in the audience. And straight away, Ballycillian, the allotment man, is there saying good evening all. Good evening to you. Kate is there saying good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Rob is there saying good evening to you. Good evening to you. Turbo Stream is there. Good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Gary, good evening all. Only here for a bit tonight. That's a shame, but lovely to see you nonetheless. Hope you are well. Hargrove Gas, evening all. Sorry I missed last week. Pleased to be back with you all tonight. We missed you. We missed you as always. Hope you are well. Stuart Jackson, evening Richard and Veg Army. Hope we are all enjoying the garden. Indeed we are. New viewer, Doodle Sparkle. Hi everyone. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Hope you are well. Whereabouts in the country are you joining us from? Graham is there saying good evening, everyone. I hope you've all had a great week. Andrew is there. Evening all. Good evening to you. Tabistrom is saying hello. Digwell says, Alexor, what time is it? Alexor, or what time is it? I got this the second bit. What time is it? But not the first bit. Roxy's just came in and realised she can't get back out because the door's closed after her, and she's moaning about it. So if I have to run and let her out, I will do that in a minute. Scott is there saying good evening all. Good evening to you. Anna is there saying good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Idaho, hello, Richard and everyone. Hello to you. Scott is there. Good, all good, both work. All good, both work. No idea what's going on there. What have we got? Anna Jones. Oh, have I said hello? Rob says, was great here Friday and Saturday talking about the weather. Right, lots of people saying hello. Lots of things that I really can't get into there. Right, Scott, looking forward to this one. Haven't done it before, but looking at trying it this year. Now, this is talking about straw bale gardening, which is what we want to talk about today. So I do want to find out if anybody has done it before, looking at trying it again this year. From my stance, I have tried it before, but it didn't quite work. Nigel was there saying good evening all, but because it didn't work before, I'm trying it again this year. Amanda is there. Evening all. Good evening to you. Chili Kate is there. Evening, Richard and everyone. Good evening to you. God, lots of comments. My dad has joined. Hello. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. Where are we? Oh, Doodle is from the south coast of England. Same here. I'm on the south coast myself. Nigel says Alexa. Well, my Alexa is. Oh, right. Talking about that thing, that foreign language that Scott. That's not Scott. Sorry, Digwell came up with. Where were we? Right, a lot of comments tonight. Evening all from the Kentish Gardener. Never heard of this. Never heard of straw bale gardening. So let's get into it. Rob says, where does straw bale gardening come from? So my understanding, straw bale gardening came from a guy in America. And what he noticed is that he was on a farm, he was using straw for his animals, which gradually rotted down where they were. And then he was using it as a mulch and realized that plants were growing really, really well. So he developed that to try and create a sorry, I've got to let Roxy out 2 seconds because she's whining. There we go, back again. That'll teach her for coming in when I'm doing a show. Yeah, so the guy in America, I forget his name off the top of my head. He created this method of straw bale gardening, but it's not simply, or the easiest way to explain straw bale gardening is that we are growing in straw bales. We would plant our plants in straw bales, but it's not as easy as just taking your plant and sticking it in a straw bale. You have got to do a conditioning process, which I'm hoping we will get into. If anybody has any questions, then please feel free to ask. I'm no expert, but I think as a group, we can try and work this out together. Gary says to Scott, I made your chicken and leek crumble. Very nice. Thank you for the recipe. Stuart says, never done straw bale gardening and probably won't do it this year. Would you be interested in it, or would it be something for the kids to do at school as a thought? Turbo Stream says, I don't even know where I would buy a bale in a big city. You'll be surprised, actually. You would be a bit surprised where it is sold. But the question I guess I would ask is, or the question I thought is, do you really need a straw bale? We're talking about straw bale because it makes it simple. But if you go down to a pet shop and buy a load of straw, put that in a raised bed, you could use that instead. I think that would work just as well. Idaho says a lot of people do straw bale gardening over there. And Idaho says the hard part is finding the organic straw. Yeah, I can imagine that is a hard thing to do. Joel Carston, that's his name, Joel Carston. Yeah, he was on the podcast. Was it 2020? I can't remember. I interviewed him on the podcast years and years ago, and it got really quite interesting. Good chat with him as well. Straw bale gardening. I watched a couple of YouTube channels doing it last year with mixed results, so I think I'll give it a miss. Fair enough. Richard Golden says, hello all. Rob says, I've seen where people have grown potatoes in straw. Yep, using straw as a mulch. Not quite the same sort of thing, but that's just using it as a mulch. But not quite the same thing, but it's along those lines. Oh, I missed a comment I was clicking on there. Digwest says grown in straw and straw bale gardening are very different things. I'm trying to keep it simple for everybody. Gary says, why would you do straw bale gardening instead of in the ground, raised beds or pots? Good question. This is a very good question, Gary. So why would you? For me, the reason I'm looking at doing straw bale gardening is I have an area where I can't really get beds growing. It's just too the wrong area. It's alongside the south side of my garden, so it doesn't get much light. But it becomes a very weedy, very messy place. So my idea is I'm going to pot these straw bales there. They'll suppress any weeds down below and hopefully get rid of anything underneath that area. But we're still going to use it for growing. The other thing that you could use it for, if you do have some large raised beds, it costs a fortune to fill with compost. If you start off with straw bale gardening, you're already halfway there come the end of the season because it's rotted down into a compost. Rob says it's 5 years ago today since we went into a lockdown. Has it really been that long? Stuart says, I would love to try it with the children as a test. Indeed. I've been told that the slugs love straw. Is this true? Not from what I understand in straw bale gardening. Digwell says is one reason, talking about that. Right, I'm going to have to crack on because there's so many comments to get through. So quite a few people are, if I've missed any of your comments, please don't feel aggrieved. But if you want to ask something, please do ask again. Doodle says, I put straw around my strawberries. Seems to deter slugs for us. Interesting. That's where strawberries get their name from. The straw pot around as a mulch, which is always a good thing to try and do. Gary says, I used barley straw for mulching my strawberries one year. Ended up growing a bed of barley straw because of all the seeds in it. Okay. So there is a very good reason you were getting seeds into it, because you need to condition your straw bales. So my plan is I get paid next weekend, and I'm going to go get a couple of straw bales. I'm going to bring them home and pop them in place. And then what we have to do is spend a while conditioning. And this is where I think I went wrong last time I did straw bale gardening. What you have to do is you have to get the straw wet and damp so that it starts breaking down, but you also have to add some fertilizer and feeds so that you charge up the fertilizer and the feeds, and it almost starts the compost process. The straw bales will start to get hot, and that's the composting process starting to begin. In fact, Digwell sent me a few photos because he's quite knowledgeable on this, and I can't quite see him. So let me just bring it over there. So conditioning per bale. As you can see, you spread this out over 2 weeks for the conditioning process. Day one, you might add 1 ammonia sulfate or half a urea in cups, that is, and then water. You water until it's saturated. Nothing on day 2. Day 3, same as day 1. Again, you saturate. Day 4, you only water 1 gallon. Day 5, same feed as in days 1 and 3, but only a gallon of water. Day 6, no feed. 7, 8, and 9, you reduce the feed by a half. Again, all only down to 1 gallon. And then after that, you used a balanced fertilizer such as Gromor or something like that every day. And then after 2 weeks, you can start planting. That is how I understand it. Hopefully Digwell will tell me if I've got that right. Oh, hang on. All your comments have just disappeared. So bear with me. There they go. There we go. So as I said, my mistake I made is I didn't use the right stuff to start the straw bale gardening down. Didn't use the right fertilizer. I thought I did. I thought I was being clever by using chicken manure pellets or something like that. That was a high nitrogen feed. It didn't work. I'm looking at urea because I think that's going to be a good thing to use. You can buy that off Amazon. But what has anybody else? What food or fertilizer did you use to condition your straw bales? Let us know in the comments. One of the great advantages that I found when I did do straw bale gardening, after the season, the straw did break down to compost. It worked because I had a load of compost, I had a load of mulch for following years, which we have used. And if you are like me, you struggle to make enough compost more than the allotment, straw bale gardening might be the way to do it. Digwell says, my latest metal raised beds would need 2,500 litres of compost, which would probably cost about £300 to fill up with compost, depending where you get it from. It's a lot of compost. So straw bales are probably about £5 a go. Probably 3 of those in that size bed, maybe 2. So 10 quid. It's quite a cheap way to fill up your raised beds. Idaho says, as the bales rot down, they make great soil. Yeah, they do make a great compost, which is ultimately what we are after. Ballistillion says, unfortunately, Rob, during lockdown was my busiest time in work. Very sad time. Indeed it was. So I got a hair in my mouth. Digwell says, I had less slugs in the bale than in my beds last year. Interesting. I wonder if that's because of the conditioning process where it has to get really, really hot. If you want to ask a question, says Nigel, get noticed, start a comment with question. Yeah, please don't be put off. Please, we want your comments. It's just I may have to skip over if I get loads. I may have to skip over some to try and catch up. This is just trying to get around everyone. Idaho says, I live in an arid climate, so the bales last a few years before they fall apart and turn into soil. A few years is still pretty damn good. I think here you probably get a good 2 years out of a straw bale before it does break down. But this is one of the things, if I can get it to work at home, I'm thinking on the allotment, my big corrugated iron beds, we could use those for strawbale gardening next year, which are going to be brassicas in those. Then that might work well to really fill those up. Digger says that is poor broken. But something going on there. What have we got? Turbo Stream says, I tried to straw it around strawberries full of slugs that ate the strawberries. Probably because it was damp, but yeah. Turbo Stream says, but Stroach is straw, so it'd be interesting to see what happens around my cauliflowers when I plant them. So Stroach is a type of straw. It's a mulch. It's straw that's been chopped and conditioned to be used. It's not strawbale gardening, but it is used as a mulch. Well, day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 do not need to follow each day, so you can take a break every day or so between days. That's feeding. What feed or what fertilizer do you recommend, Digwell? Because I know Digwell's done this before. What feed or fertilizer would you recommend? And in fact, on that note, we do have a few photos of what's going on here of Digwell. Now, this is Digwell actually conditioning, I believe it is. You can see he's got that cup of something or another that is a fertilizer that he's sprinkling over the straw bales to fertilize. That's all you've got to do is sprinkle it over the top, water it in, sprinkle it over the top and water it in. It's really, really easy to do like that. Where were we? Gary says, does urea mean what I think it means? Yes and no. Urea is found in urine, but it is extracted and you can buy it on Amazon. It's not that expensive really, but if you need it for 2 weeks just to charge it up, then it's well worth doing. Stuart says, just looked at straw bales, about £3 to £5 each. How does that compare to compost? And I think I saw, there we go. Digwell says, each bale is around 6 bags of compost, plus the urea is quite cheap. Question is then, if we're using urea, could we not just all pee on the straw bales to charge it? Would that work? Would that be a cheaper way of doing it? Not that I'm recommending it, I'm just intrigued. What if we all peed on our straw bales? I've just realised I've got to keep an eye on Instagram. Nothing going on over there just yet. Stuart says, this is very interesting. The information that came up already may have changed my mind. I personally think it's an interesting way of gardening. It could work in schools as just another way of learning about gardening. Digwell says, no way would mine last 2 years, just too wet. So year 2, they are good for compost. That's interesting. I found mine when I did it, as I said, I didn't do it right, but I found mine year 2, it had rotted down enough that I could almost use it as compost. Just looking over at my notes. Where were we? Good question. Andrew said, urea, isn't that just like peeing all over the straw? Why buy it when it's free? I think it's more concentrated. It's more concentrated and it doesn't smell. Urea doesn't smell and it's more concentrated. Roxy's done it again. She's came in and the door is closed, so she can't get out. I'm going to have to open the door for her once again. Right, sorry about that. She's on one today. She's been busy all weekend. What else have we got? Urea works out cheaper. Sorry, I'm having to skip. On a practical note, says Gary, how heavy are straw bales? Are they easy to move around and do they fit in a family-sized car? So they do fit in a family-sized car in the boot. Are they heavy? I wouldn't describe them as heavy. I can lift them quite easily. And they're fairly easy to move around. They can leave straw everywhere when you move them is the only thing. But I'm heavy. I can't think how heavy a straw bale is. I don't find them that heavy, but that's me. I'm not saying I'm strong or anything, but I can lift stuff quite easily. Doodle says, Turbo, yes, that's, I think, what we're doing. I'm going to order a bag this evening. Be interesting to compare the results on a future live. Oh, Turbo Stream, my idea with Stroll is to surround new planters and give them a chance of survival. Once they're a good size, the slugs leave them alone or do minimal damage. Be interesting to see how it compares. I have used Strolch before. £20 a bag, it's a lot of money. That's why I've stopped using it, because I would need to spend something like £300 on Strolch. So yeah. Stuart Jackson says human wheat has to be left for a few days before you can use it, as it is too strong on day one. But Digwell says you would need around 50 gallons of pea per bale per day. I have 22 bales, so I need to drink an awful lot of cider. Yes, you would. But that's the point. That's why we're using urea instead of pea. Could use pea. I know it goes on well in the compost bins, but yeah. Stuart says like, share, and follow, etc. Please remind everyone. Yeah, please do give us a like, follow, and subscribe if you are enjoying this. And Andrew talked about drinking cider. I can think of more challenging tasks to do in the garden. Digwell says a bale is around 15 kilos. I didn't think it was that heavy, but yeah, 15 or 20 kilos. So I don't think it's too heavy. That was a question that came up earlier. How heavy to? I don't think they're too heavy. You can easily fit straw bale. Oh, hang on. Something's going on here. Can you still hear me? Hang on. What's going on here? There. I've left Digwell up there all the whole time while I've been chatting away to everyone. I didn't realise they'd done that. But you could still hear me. Oh, you can hear you. And Kate says, I'm too short to pee on a bale. Yeah, a shiwi or something is what you would need to do that. But I don't think peeing on it is the way to do it, in all honesty. I don't think it's fair on the neighbours. I don't think it's fair on anybody around us. Much better to buy urea. I've seen urea on Amazon. It's not that much money to buy. Pretty cheap, to be honest with you. So if you are going to do it, I would recommend buying urea. Or ammonium sulfate was the other thing. I think urea for me is a bit more organic. All I can see is that blooming Digwell bloke. It's only because Digwell's actually sent some photos over for this tonight, because he's spoken from experience with all these photos. Anyway, so we've done. The idea being we got to charge it up. We got to spend 2 weeks getting that compost charged and conditioned, ready for growing in. Once that 2 weeks is up, it should be good to use. So I'm going to start mine. Well, I'm going to get them into place this weekend, and then hopefully next weekend we would start the charging up. That'll give us 2 weeks, which should take us to about the middle of April, which I think is when we can probably start planting out some plants. And I'm just going to show up some more photos that Digwell sent us. These are the straw bales. As you can see, he used a lot of them last year. These metal beds down at the front are what he's filled up. And in fact, we got a photo this year of those filled with straw bales. So it just goes to show how far those straw bales can go when they are full up. This one is the same as the first one, with a cover over the straw bales. I guess that's to do something or another. And in this photo as well is Digwell watering them. They do need a lot of water to get them conditioned and to keep them going. But once they're planted up, it is good to go. Right. Google says a straw bale weighs around 20 kilograms. I don't think they're that heavy. Gary, if Digwell provides a cider, we can all come over and pee on his 22 bales. Kate says, that sounds like a plan. I'll bring my shiwi. Excellent. What have we got? Anna Jones says a traditional way to clear earwigs out of flower beds has always been matchboxes full of straw. So are earwigs attracted to the straw bales? I'm going to take a guess that earwigs are probably attracted to the straw if it's dry. The thing is, when we're doing straw bale gardening, the straw is rotting down, so it's going to be very, very damp. It's going to be very, very wet. It's going to be very, very hot. So I suspect the earwigs are not going to like that, but I could be wrong, and that's just me thinking out loud. Stuart Jackson, do you leave the bale together or do you break them down a bit? You leave them together. That I do know. You do leave the straw bales together with the twine still around them. When you finish for the season and the straw has broken down to compost, and that's when you take them apart. Doodle saying hello, waving. Was that because have I missed? Oh, Adrian has joined. Hello, Adrian. Well, lovely to see you. Digwa says to keep the bales dry, you are not moving them when they're wet. That makes sense now. He put that cover over them to keep them dry so he didn't have to lift them when they are wet, because straw, when it's wet, is probably going to be a lot heavier. Now, Digwa says those beds took 3 bales to fill, £13.50 of bales versus 1,280 litres of compost, 140 quid. Kind of proves the point, isn't it? That if you have got a lot of beds to fill, a lot of raised beds, and straw bale gardening might be the cheaper way to get them filled. As I said, I'm really thinking about doing it again because I think it is a way to do it. Now, Stuart Jackson has moved on to the next part that I was going to go into as well. Now we've got the bales in place, what plants would you advise? Thanks, T. So what plants, if you've done straw bale gardening or looking at straw bale gardening, what plants can you grow in straw bale gardening? More importantly, what plants can't you grow in straw bale gardening? Now, when I tried it in the past, I did grow tomatoes, chilies, aubergines, and cauliflowers and cabbages in my straw bales fairly successfully. I tried doing carrots, but that didn't work. They germinated, but they just didn't quite work. May have been something I was doing wrong. Now, my plan this year, with where these straw bales are going, because they're going to be in the shady side, I am thinking of growing pumpkins and courgettes in those. Just because they're going to use up that space, they're going to use that heat, and they're going to drag all that nutrition from the rotting straws and produce good pumpkins, courgettes, etc. Squash plants, if you like. I suspect also because pumpkins are trading in quite a way, they're going to reach to the sun. So the lack of light where they are going to be growing isn't going to be a problem. But I'd like to know, what plants would anybody else do? Now, Stuart does add another question. Sow seeds or plant seedlings? Depends on the plant, of course. But I would say that plant your plants inside it. Just simply prise open the straw, take your plant out the pot and pot it in, give it a good watering, and it should establish quite nicely. Nigel says no root crops to grow in straw bale gardening, which does make sense. I think if you are experienced enough with straw bale gardening, there are ways that you can grow root crops. But I think if this is your first year, don't bother. Just learn how to do it, how to condition it, and go from there. The way I did it with carrots was to put a layer of compost on top and then sowed the seeds in that. They did germinate, they just didn't produce carrots. It just didn't quite work for carrots. One of the other concerns that I thought I might just share, actually, when we are using them, we've got these planted up, is how much water are they going to use? Again, I'm speaking from my experience. I did find they didn't really use as much or that much more water than if they were in a bed. Now, my thought was that the water would just run out because it's straw. There's lots of spaces, lots of gaps where water is going to seep from. But I found that straw is hollow, so it held on to water in the hollowness of the straw. So that worked quite well. It held on to water really, really well. And because it's already quite damp, it's quite a moist environment, not waterlogged, just quite a nice moist environment that the straw or the plants grown in the straw did seem to like. Digwell says, last year I grew nearly every type of veg in the bales. No carrots, parsnip type long veg, and no really tall things. But I will have a go at runner beans this year. Again, I'm interested to see how you get on. Digwell says, aubergine, beetroot, broccoli, calabrese, Cape gooseberries, celeriac, chilies, cucumbers, dwarf French beans, dwarf runner beans, flowers, kohlrabi, leek, lettuce, onion, orange balm, potato. Purple sprouting, still picking now. Radish, not very good. Spring onion, swede, tomato, tromboncino, and winter squash. And he goes on to say they needed very little watering last year. Last year, however, was quite a wet year, wasn't it? Was it wet? Yeah, I'm sure it was a crap year, wasn't it? So it'd be interesting to see if we have a dry year this year, whether it makes any difference with Digwell's experience. This is something I think we can keep coming back and talking about on this show. So I'm just going to quickly ask for a show of hands. Is anybody else considering trying it this year? Is anybody else thinking they're going to give this a go this year and see if it appeals to you? I'm going to raise my hand because I'm definitely going to give it a go, in part inspired by Digwell's YouTube series last year. But it'd be good to see. It would be good to see if anybody else is doing it this year as well. Gary is tempted. I'm pleased to hear that. I'm pleased to hear that. I think there are advantages. There are disadvantages, though. One of the things I didn't like is it did sort of make my garden look a little bit messy. It did look a bit untidy with these straw bales dumped in the middle of it. So that was the only downside that I had. And see what happens. Scott is also tempted. Stuart says maybe at school. Anna is tempted too. And Nicola says maybe. I think Nicola, on your farm, it'll probably be a really good way of growing, because for those that don't know, Nicola is on a 3 and a bit acre area that there's high arsenic levels in the soil, so everything she grows has to be in raised beds. So I suspect that growing in strawbale gardening would actually completely eliminate that arsenic problem for you. Turbo Stream says, I'm not tempted. Fair enough, fair enough. The bales will hide the weeds. That's exactly my plan here at home, where that area that's just difficult to keep tidy. I don't know why. Laziness, you could say. But I'm also thinking on the allotment with the couch grass, it will probably work really well as well. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Chili Cake says, my only way to do this is to place the bales on top of perfectly good soil. So not for me. That is actually a bit of a good point. What is the point of doing this when you have perfectly good soil? Good question to throw out there. What is the point if you have perfectly good soil? I'm going to throw that out there as a good question to anybody. Anybody can answer that. That would be great. Gary says, did your allotment committee have anything to say about them? I've not had them down on the allotment. They've all been here at home. But I have had quite a good chat with our allotment people, so I think I could get away with it. Scott says, I like the idea as using them as edible fencing to divide areas of the allotment. Interesting. Didn't think of that. I didn't think of that. So interesting. Digwell says, if you need convincing, have a look at my summary video, Strawbale Gardening. Will I do it again? Go check that out. Nicholas says, potting raised beds, Richard, like Digwell. I've got raised beds. Oh, you mean the potato beds already planted up this year, but next year we could probably do that. Digwell says, do not be tempted to use hay bales full of weed seeds. Absolutely. And Turbo Stream says, I'm with Chili K. I have decent soil now, so no real point. You know, you've got to say, you are coming up with a very good point. What is the point if you have perfectly good soil? I'm going to come back to, for me, the reason I think I'm tempted to do this. One, because the area that I have here at home is tricky, untidy and what have you. And I think it would just tidy that area up and put it into use for edible planting. What have you got there? Okay, you can have that. Roxy's down at my feet, everyone again. But on the allotment, I do struggle to try and produce enough compost, especially with my large raised beds. So I'm thinking strawbale gardening down there will work. Not this year because I've got potatoes in those already planted. It'll have to wait till next year. But yeah, it could work. It could work. Turbo Extreme says, if you like experiment with different methods, then why not? And I'm always open to experimenting and trying different methods. So we are always open to that. Right, I tell you what, let's cut away to a video quickly. And I'm going to do a mission that you set me for this week. This week's mission was to use recycled materials to use as seed sowing trays. So we'll do that and then we'll come back and continue this conversation. Okay, so this week's mission was to sow seeds in recyclable materials. I've got quite a few choices here. I'm going to start off with this, which you might be thinking that's not really recycled material, but actually what that is a plant pot that plants came in once and I've reused it. We're going to sow some aubergines, white knight, in these because I need to use some of these seeds up rather rapidly. I like to open these up fully to see just what we get in here. Try and spread those out a bit. So there's one recycled thing. Next we're going to use this one, which is a trade grapes come in. We're going to sow some Mizuna in this. Mizuna, if you've never grown it, it's a type of mustard. It's really, really tasty actually. We quite like eating it. He says if you can get this seed packet open. There we go, that'll do fine. Next, so this is a dog food tray. We'll sow some cabbage in that, again, just something else we've upcycled. There's the cabbage label. Some of my labels are starting to fall apart, they're so old now. I've had many of them for about 10 years, but they've done me well over that time. So, do we sow the whole packet or not? Yeah, I think we will. There we go. So 3 out of 5 so far. Next, this is a good one actually. Just a standard milk bottle. We've cut the top to make a hinge. That way it forms a bit of a greenhouse. Again, fill this up with compost, and I'm going to sow some purple sprouting broccoli in this one. Red Fire is a variety from Simply Seeds. We'll sow the whole lot because we like it. That's that label. Nearly forgot the label, which is not a good thing to do. And then finally, you've probably seen me use this before. It's an old fish box that restaurants get fish delivered to, and I always like to sow leeks in this because I find that they actually germinate rather well in this. So it is time for another sowing of leeks. We'll sprinkle that around. Now I'm going to give it an honourable mention to the trusty toilet tube inner. We could fill that up with compost and sow some sort of bean seeds or pumpkin or squash seeds in there as well. I've not done that today, but it's an honourable mention. So there we go, 5 different containers in which I've sown 5 different seeds from recycled materials. Is that a pass or a fail? Let me know, and don't forget to come up with a mission for next week. Indeed. I've just gone over to check on what's going on over on Instagram, and I've seen Jamie's little woman has told me don't forget Insta Richard, and he says strawbales will retain moisture really, really well as well. So apologies to Instagram. It's because Instagram doesn't come up on my my channel like it does on everything else, so I have to keep checking it. It's tricky. Facebook and its rules it comes up with, or Meta and its rules it comes up with, can be really, really tricky. They don't make it easy for us anyway. Anyway, where were we? Where were we with the comments? Was that pass or fail, I should ask? I think I'll see what people are saying in the comments. Nigel says, I mentioned on here about 5 weeks ago about filling your corrugated raised beds with straw bales. Please pay attention. I think that was where you gave me the idea from, funny enough. I hadn't thought about that beforehand, but I think that's where the idea came from, Nigel, from you saying that. Ginny Kate says, we did loads of seed sowing or in recycled containers at our community planting event yesterday, but I didn't take any photos. No, never mind. Still good to see you. Stuart says, recycled challenge completed. Love the milk bottle. We use that idea at school all the time. Doodle Sparks says, that's a great idea with the milk carton. We do love recycling here. Digwell says they would do well in them. I was surprised how mine stayed together on the twine once the twine was cut. They are still bales and not loose straw. Interesting indeed. Over on Instagram, Just Your Cup of Tea and Sean Chickley has joined. Although at the moment I'm still seeing Digwell's image up there, so I'm hoping it's going to change sometime soon. And Nicholas says that's 100% pass, Richard. Thank you very much. There's still more things we could have used for straw bale gardening if we are so if we thought about it so much. There's still hundreds and hundreds of things we could use for recycled seed sowing. I've only just scratched the surface, and I literally took me 5 minutes in my recycling bin to find some of those items. Don't forget, we would need a mission for next week. If anybody has any ideas of a mission for next week, then please do share it up. Don't think Jenny's here with us tonight, so I'm going to have to try and remember it myself. And I hate writing things down when talking to you. I'm going to try and do that today while I try and do this. Right, so has anybody else got anything else they want to add about straw bale gardening? Anybody got any more questions or anything they want to add about straw bale gardening? I'm sure there are more and more options that we could come up with, or more and more things that we could do. Graham says, I was amazed how many people were buying tomato plants from my local garden centre. I'm guessing they will be back buying more at the end of April with a chance of frost has passed. Wait until you hear my rant. I'm not going to say anything. Wait until you hear my rant on that. So have a quick look at my notes. One of the things that I didn't well, I think I tried to mention was the conditioning process. When we use straw bale gardening, we have to run them through this conditioning process. The straw bales heat up and they get actually surprisingly hot. I don't know what temperature we would expect to see. Again, I'm hoping somebody who has had any experience in this will be able to tell us what temperature they found the straw bales got when they were trying to condition them. Bede says, I have lots of empty wine bottles, but they break when I try to cut them in half. There's a good way of cutting wine bottles, actually. What you have to do, I've done this, so you have to get like a hot water and cold water. I'm trying to remember how I did it. So I think it was hot water on the outside, and then you poured cold water on the inside, and that broke quite cleanly. That's how I remember breaking glass bottles anyway. Rob says garden centres have to have stock ready for Mother's Day and Easter. Okay. We'll sow mine at the end of a month. Turbo Stream says, I recycled some spare tools this week. I gave them to a community garden that has been totally vandalised. Our allotment has given them 2 plots so that it can carry on gardening. Such a shame for them. Indeed. Over on Instagram, just your cup of cheese says, have you done container growing for small spaces, gardens, maximising space? That could be something we talk about next week if everybody's in agreement. Small space gardening. I'll drop that down as a subject for next week. Sometimes you never know how this conversation goes. Digwa says, mine only got to 5 degrees C above ambient last year. Interesting. But did you have a soil thermometer or like a compost thermometer to see what is that hot in the center? Hot on the inside, then run under a cold tap. That was right. Hot on the inside, run under a cold tap. Or was that for the mission? Sorry, Chi. Just a cup of tea. Was that for the mission? A small space, maximising small space. Square foot gardening. You know I'm not a fan of square foot gardening. I've tried it many times, but I'm not a fan. That could be something that comes up in conversation, eh? Same here, plenty early. Yeah, we'll worry about that. Stuart says small space gardening would be great. Yep, that's next week's. Would you consider doing a Q&A session one week, Richard? We can do a Q&A. Yeah. We can do a Q&A one week, indeed. Hey, you are on one today, girl, aren't you? Roxy, she's just stolen some seed packets and is wandering off with seed packets. Oh, an electronic thermometer. That's surprising. Surprising, but hey, try not, do or do not. There's no try. What was I meant to try? Do or do not. What was I saying I should try? We'll find out. Remind me sometimes. You know what it's like doing these shows sometimes. The mind just wanders, especially when I get distracted. Must stay focused. Must stay focused. But yeah, we can do a Q&A one week. I think next week, the small space gardening and maximising space is something we will discuss at great length. Right. I tell you what else have we got? Q&A would be good for a variety of things, absolutely. But you know how only thing I say with Q&A, the way I like to run this stream is I like it to be a pool of information. I don't like it coming in from that I share the answers that I have. I like everybody to pop their own 2 pence worth, and we can all work together to find the right answers. If that makes sense. There is a saying that if you ask a gardener one question, or if you ask 3 gardeners one question, you will get 4 answers. And I think that is true. Digger says, quote, I tried square foot gardening. I did try square foot gardening. I did square foot gardening. It just didn't work for me. You have to be incredibly, incredibly organized for it. And I just didn't like it. Just a cup of tea says, yes, a subject for another time as my garden is small and a lot of it paved. Yeah, we will do that next week. And please tell me, because I got a copy of Instagram over there, and when I'm looking over, I can still see Digwell's photo on it. Is that the same for everyone? Is everyone seeing Digwell's photo on Instagram? Is that stuck up there? So try or do, there is no try. Yeah, well, I tried it. I tested it, I should say then. That's probably the better word to use. I tested it. It wasn't for me. But it is a method of gardening. You just have to be incredibly organized when it comes to it. Right, let's go to... where were we? Right, let's have a look at this week's recipe, this week's cook-along that you sent me for last week. Okay, so this week we have got a tempura broccoli recipe. This was actually a recipe that Scott sent in a few weeks ago, so you can find it on the website, also hear it on the podcast. We've got 60 grams of plain flour, we're sticking in the bowl. We've also got 140 grams of corn flour, also sticking in the bowl. Then we have got 160 mils of sparkling water, very, very, very cold. That is the recommendation. Obviously not freezing, because that would be ice. And we just mix this together to make a strong batter. Now this is quite a thick batter, I'm realising. Should it be this thick? I don't think so. Just checking I got those measurements right. Yeah, that is that's almost like a pudding recipe, pudding batter. So I'm going to add a drop more. Hopefully that's okay with Scott if I adapt this as we go. Sometimes recipes just need a little bit of tweaking, don't they? That was just a splash more. That seems a little bit better. Perhaps I miscalculated. There we go. That's better. That's a much better batter consistency. Sorry, I've just kicked the camera. So what we then do, I have got here 200 grams of broccoli. Recipe does state to mix them, or to cut them in half. I'm not going to do that because I'm lazy. We're just going to mix this up in the batter really, really well. And then what we're going to do is deep fry that in a pan. So I'm using a reasonably deep pan, probably not deep enough, but we want to see if the oil is just hot enough to cook this first. So we just take a drop off and drop it in, and that tells me it's not ready just yet. So we'll give that a few more minutes for the oil to be hot enough, because it didn't sizzle, it didn't do what it wanted to do. There we go, it just started to lift up there. So I think it is nearly there. Let's try another drop and see if that makes any difference. Nearly, very nearly. This is a bit I don't like, just trying to get the heat just right to cook things. Give it another try. It's certainly cooking. It's just not giving that big sizzle we were expecting. But I reckon that is more or less ready. Just drop a bit more. Okay, let's just start and keep throwing this in and see what happens. I think that is, yeah, just spot on. Okay, so we batch cooked all that, and this is what we've ended up with, a nice big bowl of what looks like some delicious tempura broccoli. Now, what I've done, I've made a quick little dipping sauce, just some soy sauce and chili sauce, and we're just going to give that a try. Oh, God. That is lovely. That is absolutely lovely. Scott, that's a good 10 out of 10 on that. I may not have cooked it correctly, I don't care. That is absolutely delicious. So quick, so easy to make. Great as a little snack. Healthy, is it healthy? It's got broccoli, so it must be healthy. I'm loving it, absolutely loving it. I am going to eat this entire bowl to myself, and I don't care. So as you can tell, I really liked that recipe. It was a good one, and very, very easy to do. I'm not saying I quite got it right, but I don't care. It was good. So just quickly, over on Instagram, just a cup of cheese says, I can't see anyone unless they comment. Perhaps Digwell's lurking in the corner. No, what I mean, I get a preview screen here that I should be able to see what you are seeing. And all I'm seeing is that picture of Digwell putting urea on his straw from earlier. So it obviously hasn't updated itself on my screen. She also says nice crunch, which is yeah, nice crunch to that. A really good one. Really good one. Digwell says that's better. The word try implies a half-hearted effort. I don't agree with that. I think sometimes you try things out. You test things out. I think that it's not saying I tried. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I think I use it as in I tried or trialed things out. Scott says, shouldn't be that thick. Did I do a typo? I will check. It may have been something I did wrong. I don't think you did, but it may have been something I just did wrong. Sometimes it happens, doesn't it? It just happens. Cider works well as a sparkling liquid for tempura. Oh, that's a good idea. But well, it's a waste of cider, though, at the same time, isn't it? Mind you, it might give me an excuse to open a bottle of cider and go from there. Digwell says use a thermometer, 170 to 180 C. That's an idea. Or a plastic one, as Rob says. I know what that's referring to. I know exactly what that's referring to. Bubbles in the oil equals wet oil. I'd love to know where that wet oil came from, because that was fresh oil out the bottle. All the batter has gone. Nigel says, listening through headphones for that vid, your pulse rate was 85 beats. Could you hear my heart rate through that? You could hear my heart rate, could you? I'm going to have to turn that down. It is nice without the batter as well. Yeah, not into broccoli. It's more a tender stem broccoli or early purple sprouting broccoli you could use for that. But I was having a conversation with Scott about this earlier, actually, and we were sort of saying that, you know, we all love our meat, or most of us love our meat, I should say, unless you're vegetarian or anything. But we need to make veg the centerpiece once more, make people excited about eating vegetables again. That cook along makes me feel hungry. It was a good one, that was a really good one. Scott says, sounded crispy, and if it tasted good, then that's what matters. I would check the ratio of water in a recipe and update if needed. Thank you. Thank you. Stop talking about cider, says Stuart. I need to drink now. Graham says, Rob would prefer a tempura battered Stella. Yeah. Yes to heart rate. You could hear my heart rate. I'm finding microphones on the cameras really difficult to get right at the moment for some reason. I'll have to look into that. I got 4 cans at my side as we chat. Digger says some oils have a high moisture content. I have to heat my Tesco veg oil for 10 minutes before cooking in it. Okay. It could be that then. Is the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? Is the way it goes sometimes. But I could have turned the heat up to get rid of any more moisture from that oil. I didn't. It was good enough. It was good enough. Was the mic placed on your heart, says Nigel? This is probably going to be really boring for everybody else. So you'll notice I usually have a pocket here. That's generally where I put my microphones. So yeah, it's not far from my heart, but yeah, I'm using a shotgun microphone tonight, but I don't generally like shotgun microphones for a very good reason. Too far away, you can't pick it up. Alcohol works well in a batter. A dash if a vodka in batter works well. I think it helps drive off the water quicker. Yeah, I'll take your word for that. I always worry it's a waste of cider though, but hey, each to their own. Love my status. Donald Spargus. Some of these comments are hilarious. Try standing on this side of it, especially when they try and get me to say something they don't what I shouldn't say. No surprise to hear that, Rob. No offense, ladies, but it is a lady's drink. I'm talking about Stella. Yeah. Tender stem broccoli. Mine was lush, but that recipe next, methinks. Give it a go. It is on the veggrowlpodcast.co.uk. Despite. No, it is on the website. We are having a couple of issues with the website that my IT guy is working very hard to try and sort out. The one about where's the batter gone? That was so funny. Oh, did I miss one? Where did I miss the where's the batter gone? I can't see. It is nice without the batter as well. The Digwell there, yeah. That's the only thing I thought was going to go wrong is that the batter didn't stick as well to the broccoli as I was expecting. Probably needed to dust it in in flour first. But we live and learn. Digwell, I stopped using shotgun mics after a week or it hit me in the chin. Oh yeah. I said all the batter has gone. Okay, I'll review. Chris Guns on allotment journey. Hi everyone. Sorry I'm late. No problem. Lovely to see you nonetheless. Right. What do we do? Has anybody got anything else they want to ask about strawbale gardening before we move on? Because I have got a few photos to go through, and then I've got the rant, which might actually lead to a bit of conversation. So we'll just see if anybody's got anything to add about strawbale gardening before we move on with that. I'm trying to think, have I got any more questions that I want to ask? I think I've got everything that I need to ask. I think it could be a good Good question. Gary's actually came up with a good question though. Are yields better with straw bale gardening compared to growing in the ground? Are yields better? That is a good question. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Perhaps Digwell might be able to answer that from his experience, or anybody else that's done straw bale. I know I keep referring to Digwell because I know he did it last year, but anybody else that's done straw bale gardening would be good to get their experience as well. Digwell says, how about cauliflower steak for the next recipe? We could do a cauliflower steak. If everybody agrees, cauliflower steak we can do. I mean, it's not really a steak, is it? But I can do a nice cauliflower steak. I actually do quite like using steak to make cauliflower rice. I find that a nice way of using cauliflowers. Gary also asked, do crops take the same amount of time to grow? Just your cup of tea says curried cauliflower steak as a recipe for next week. Curried. I think I can add that in there as well. I like the idea of this now. You're talking my language when you talk about currying anything. Rob says, instead of cauliflower steak, how about a fillet steak and chips? We're pushing the boundaries of what we can do. Digwell has done it again this year and put up recent videos on strawbales. Indeed, he has. Indeed, he has. Yeah, Gary's just asking some questions there. Stuart says, if anyone starts straw bale gardening, the garden centres will start selling the straw bales for £20 each. So the cheapest place I find to get straw bales from is actually a farmer's supply. We've got a few near us. That's generally the cheapest place to go. And in fact, one of them actually sells compost for cheaper than a garden centre as well. So if you do have a local tractor supply or something like that, it's well worth popping in, because actually, well, it's where I get my chicken feed from, funny enough. They often sell stuff much cheaper than a garden centre. And I know I shouldn't say that, but it's the truth. Would doubt it, since trace elements should be present in the soil. What was that in reply to? Oh, do crops take the same amount of time to grow? Don't know. Mine was on par, says Digwell, talking about yields. Certainly no worse, but my spuds were out of the world. Squashes were very good too. Yes, same timing too. Thank you. Thank you. So there we go. If anybody has any more questions to add, we do still need a mission for next week. I think, excuse me, curried cauliflower steak is going to be next week's recipe, but mission for next week. But let's have a quick look at some of your photos that you have sent in this week. And I'm not going to be able to do this. I've got to move the screen because of this. Oh God. There we go. Got there. That wasn't easy. So it's time to look at your photos. Now, these are Gary's broad beans that are in flower, which I was really, really impressed with. I've got to say, I believe Gary was asking questions a few weeks ago about his broad beans being hit by frost, maybe back in January, thinking about it. But look at them now. They've bounced back amazing and are in flower. You'll soon be getting some lovely broad beans from that. Brilliant start to the year, isn't it? Stuart's getting ready for April's plant sales. We've got tomatoes and cauliflowers and things like that ready for the plant sales. Jenny has been cutting seed potatoes to try and get some more plants out of it. This was a method that people would often use, and in fact is still a used method in certain parts. Gives you more plants for your money, which is a good way. And all you've got to do is just cut a seed potato into several pieces, ideally where each piece has its own eye, and that means you should in theory get more plants. Do need to give it a day or two for the cut to dry before you plant it though. Nathan's aubergine jungle is the only way I can call this. I think he called it himself. Those aubergines look absolutely amazing. They're grown really, really well, putting on some good signs of growth, and they look amazing, don't they? So good stuff there going on there, Nathan. Soon be time to get them outside. I can't remember where you are in the world, but it won't be long till you can either get them in a greenhouse or outside. But wait a while first. Beddoes has been sharing some of his usual humour, and that was his wife took up gardening, and I wondered what she's going to plant with a 6-foot hole dug there. The thing I really noticed was the different colour of the soil as you go down through the layers. I always find that fascinating for some reason, the different colours of soil as you dig down. Kate is doing what we all should do, screw it on gardening, even though there's snow everywhere. And I think that's very true. You know, I always talk about going gardening throughout the winter. I do think it is something we should encourage and try and do because well, it's a good time to get out in the garden. And whether it's snowing or wet or whatever, let's get out and do something. Digwell has also found some bargains in the middle aisle of was this Aldi or Lidl? Lidl, wasn't it? I've got to admit, I very rarely go into a supermarket these days, but yeah. There's lots of good stuff, twine and pots. How much were those pots and what size were those pots? Bee house and some metal twists and tree supports, stuff that we all going to need. So please do keep sharing your photos. We absolutely love seeing them. You can post them in our Facebook group, send to me via social media, or email me, richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. As always, we love your photos. We really do love your photos. We'd like to see them all the time if we can. So please do keep them coming. What's going on? I can't see what's going on there, so we just have to make the most out of it. Right, where were we with the comments? Chris says, can you carry strawbales in your care without suffering from hay fever? I don't suffer from hay fever, so it's okay for me, but my guess is that because it's straw, not hay, you're probably less likely to suffer from hay fever. But I don't know. There's going to be no pollen in it, I would imagine. Tammy Stream says, I searched for straw bales in Birmingham. The I answer gave me local suppliers in Yorkshire and Leighton Buzzard. There's going to be somewhere near you that does sell straw bales. I can guarantee you that. In fact, I'm thinking of some farmers' shops near you that, yeah, you probably got to go out in the sticks, but they will be there. Vegetable lasagna, says Graham, as another option. We do like a good vegetable lasagna. What have we got? Gary says, yes, it was in the new year. I said those raw beans that got cold damage and lost about 10%. But look at what you've got now. They look amazing. I'm absolutely amazed with that. I'm a bit jealous, to be honest with you. Digwell says, I do have to be careful because my skin allergies kick in if I get scratched, talking about straw. Gloves, long sleeves, balaclava and things like that. Turn your potatoes into chips and watch them chit. Oh, great stuff. And 5 centimeters pots, $2.99 for 40. All right, I'm going to have to pop in there soon. There's a Lidl next to my work. I'll have to pop in there on the way home from work tomorrow. Lidl had some decent hand tools for $1.99 each. Seemed good quality, so I bought a few for the allotment. Yeah, good stuff. Lidl do produce some decent tools sometimes, as I've been told. So yeah, good. Nicholas says, has everyone given us a thumbs up, a follow, a subscribe, and a click the notifications so that you know when we go live? If I don't say that, I actually get told off by both Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Sorry, I'm keeping an eye on Instagram at the same time now. Still think egg on toast 1 week. Egg on toast 1 week. That'll be a winter warmer. But you so that where dig well. Oh yeah. I have a video, eggs in a basket. Lovely. Is that the recipe they used on V for Vendetta? I tried making that once. It worked out quite well. Gary says, sorry, you need to run. Thanks for another great show. No worries. I think it is time, however, that we went to Richard's rant. So get prepared for this because I'm going to love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, it is now time for Richard's rant of the week. And this week, what am I going to rant about? I'm sure that's a question that you are all asking. Have you been in a garden centre over the last week or so? I have. Well, one of the things I noticed that they are already selling are potted vegetable plants. Now, I'm not talking about the brassicas. Yes, there was some brassicas there. I'm talking tomatoes, chilies, peppers, runner beans, pumpkins, courgettes. Now, you might be wondering what the problem is I have about that. For me, I think it is too early. I do have pumpkin plants, I do have courgette plants already grown. I haven't started my beans other than broad beans yet. But the problem I have with it, if I was to go to a garden centre not really knowing what I'm doing, and I went and bought some of these plants, and I've known people to do this, I might be inclined to think, well, garden centres are selling them, it's time to plant them out. It's not. It's far, far too early, particularly the pumpkins and the tender plants, the sweet peppers and things like that. Might get away with brassicas, maybe the onions, might still be a little bit too early for those. But if I didn't know what I was doing, I might go and buy those. And I had people do this on my allotment. Some people have suggested that the reason that garden centres are doing this is so that we would go and buy them, they would get killed off by frost, so we go and buy them a second time. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe it's just people being a bit cynical. But the other problem I have with it, pumpkins, courgettes and even beans, they get quite big. And unless you've got a huge polytunnel, I don't think you're going to have the space for them. Again, I caveat that with saying that I have got pumpkins that I've already sown from seeds. They're getting big already. And it was far too early, in my opinion, to sow those, but we are following AI in order to do that. It was far too early to sow those. They are getting big, and by the time middle May, which is generally when it's safe to plant these out, those plants are going to be so big, we're not going to have space to keep them. So we may end up losing plants just purely through lack of space. This is where the problem comes in. I think it is a bit of a wrong time to really be selling any of these plants. Wrong time of year to really think about getting these plants in the ground completely, other than brassicas and a few other plants. I don't know what anybody else out there is planting at the moment, if any. But the majority of these, it's just too early. Just too early. Thank you, BBC. Just too early to get those in the ground. So that's my roundup of the week. What do you think on that?
Indeed. What? Oh, have I actually came back on screen before? Yes, I have. Technical issues going on every week. So yeah, don't you think that is just too early to be selling those plants? I mean, I say too early. It is a bit on the wrong side, I think. It just wrong thing to do, I feel, because in a garden centre, it looks like the plants are outside. They are left outside overnight, but they have a roof over them that keeps them warm, and they put fleece over them if it's going to be cold. So they can go in an unheated greenhouse with a polytunnel or a grow frame or cold frame, but I don't think they can go outside. And that, for me, is where the issues lie. Now, on Instagram, Just Your Cup of Cheese says, Dutch, no doubt, meaning plants come from Denmark. It might pot off the less experienced if they all die. Indeed, indeed. That's my point as well. I think, and I had this on my allotment a few years ago. Somebody went to a garden centre around this time. They just, their first couple of months on their allotment, they brought a load of these plants, and I saw them doing it, planting out the peppers, planting out tomatoes. And that very next day, we had a hard frost and they all died. I never saw those people again. And that is where I think it is wrong. She goes on to say headlines just in because of the BBC coming up with that notification. Digwa says, you make a hole in a thick piece of bread, fry it on one side, turn it over, and then crack an egg into the hole. Lovely. Yes, that's exactly what they do on V for Vendetta. It is lovely. Nigel says, Dash not garden centre / nurseries will display a sign saying to protect plants from frost. Yeah, but what does that really mean? I mean, I say that to be a bit flippant, but often I wake up and there is no frost, yet it can still kill a plant. We don't know what's going on overnight. It's one of those. I do think that is law now. Oh, yeah. Stuart says, I love it when people buy the plants after they leave them outside. The same people come to our plant sales and buy our plants. Win-win for the charity. Good. Fair enough. Digwell says, AI told me that I am love child of R. Kelly and Beyonce. What the hell? Netherlands. Yeah, they come from the Netherlands, don't they? Where they can get a bit ahead of themselves. Nigel says, another reason garden centres sell tender plants early is storage availability and capacity. A constant supply stock from abroad needs to have space for them to go. Yeah, there is that. I just think it just feels very wrong to me to be doing that. These rants, sometimes they've got to find something to rant about. I just feel it's too early, particularly, as I say, the beans. They were selling French beans, runner beans, already germinated and growing, but they are going, you can't really put those out till the middle of May, 6 weeks' time. They're going to go from, they're about that tall at the moment. They're going to go too tall to really cope with. And the same with pumpkins and things like that. They're going to get too big to really do anything with them in the next few weeks. And I say that because I do have pumpkins growing here at home. Turbo Stream, I've been to Big Webb's Garden Centre to look at their gardens. Only went inside to use a loo. Did see plugs of summer plants, but no veggies. I wasn't looking, to be fair. There we go. Donald Sparkle says, lots of young plants at our garden centre too. And yes, a frost would kill them. And if you're not sure what you're doing, then it's expensive to lose them. Exactly. I just feel some people get very excited about grow your own. And I say that because we all love grow your own. We get excited about grow your own because that's a hobby. But many of us have been doing it for years. Some of us have probably not done it for so long. And those that haven't done it for so long do rely on garden centres to advise them. And I come back to the fact that those people on my allotment who did buy a load of plants and they planted them out that day, I mean, they should have done that. They should not have done that, but lesson learned. But it put them off. They never came back. Digwa says, I have around 500 plants waiting to be sold next week. I need the space for my own veg seedlings. I know how you feel. I'm having conversations with Amanda. I've got seedlings on every windowsill in my grow house, in my greenhouse. And I'm sort of discussing with Amanda, what else can I do to try and make some more space for seedlings? Even my kitchen table is covered in seedlings, which we need next weekend. It's Mother's Day next Saturday. So I've got to make some space for that. One I remember, next Sunday, we're going to be talking about small space gardening, of course, but just to give everybody a warning, I believe, I'm pretty sure I'm correct, our clock changes. So it's spring forwards 1 hour if you're not in the UK. We still go live at 6 in the UK, but it could be an hour earlier unless your clocks change or anything like that. Just to give everyone a bit of a heads up, our clocks change next week. Stuart says, you are correct, Richard. They should make the signs bigger and read not to pot these plants outside until the last frost. And if it's a local garden centre, I kind of feel they should sort of say your last frost is usually around this date. I think that would be a better way of doing it as well. Chris says, what is everyone planting out in the garden at the minute? Broad beans, onions, and a few brassicas. That's all I'm planting out. I've planted up my greenhouse, but you'll hear more about that in the podcast and in a video this week. I was potatoes as well. Forgot about the potatoes, but Rob's done that. And Digwa says, "Are we not getting into a world where we need to be told everything up front? Warning: this coffee is hot. Stocks can go down as well as up, etc." I get what you're saying there. Totally get what you're saying there. But I've always believed that you have to treat. Um, there are people that do not know these things, and this is often on the podcast. I will say something that I know most people will know, but there may be one person who doesn't know it, and they learn something from that. And I always try and remember there may be somebody that doesn't know it. One of the biggest things is that we talk about no dig gardening, for example. Let's say I just started launching into no dig gardening. Somebody could come along and say, "Well, what is no dig gardening?" Because they don't know. So I'm all for educating people that don't know. If you don't know, you don't know, and there's no shame in that. Chris says first, second, or main crop. All mine have been. All mine are in. I'd done that last weekend. Thomas Stu says, I've been putting my cocks back for years. It's currently 23rd of March 1978. You're going back in time. Nothing too early, says Digwell. What else have we got? I think that's a. Oh, no, there are more comments coming in there. Most of all of mine are in, says Rob, talking about potatoes. And Digger says, I don't know this gun would hurt someone. I am being hyper cynical. But no, I do totally get it's called common sense, isn't it? But we all know there are people in this world that do not have common sense anymore. I totally agree with what you're saying, Digwell. But there are people who don't have common sense anymore. Crikey, there's somebody I haven't seen for a while. Dave Ford. Hi, Richard. The only veg I've sown so far are some early carrots under glass. Sown some cosmos and marigolds in the greenhouse, shoots up already, and also have some sweet peas sown in October. There we go. And Chris says, tomatoes are turning my house into a jungle. Perhaps started too many. Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. Did anybody come up with a mission? We've got 2 minutes left tonight to come up with a mission or something you can challenge me with to do for next week. We've got the recipe for next week because it's a curried cauliflower steak. And we're going to be talking about small space gardening next Sunday at 6. And I may even have a bit of an update with the straw bales. Digwell says, for my data sheets, tomatoes being sown next week here in this shire. Digwell's very good at keeping track of everything. I'm not. I'm not very good. I'm learning it. It's how to use spreadsheets these days, but I'm not very good at filling them out as we go. Digwell, Jenny's at her son's birthday do. Yes, she is. She is. Which is fair enough. Fair enough. That's why I've been taking notes. So if anybody does have a mission, a challenge to do for next week, it's not only just for Jenny to come up with a mission, it's for everybody to come up with a mission or throw an idea. And I'll take the first one that you throw at me. I mean, you know how much you can challenge me and push things. I'm trying to think. Well, I've got a busy weekend next weekend, but I'm sure we can come up with something. If not, I mean, it could challenge me to make something, build something, plant something, anything like that. Go to a garden centre and find something. Digwell says, go and film the tomatoes at a garden centre. That's that sorted. Film tomatoes at garden centre. There we go. That is the challenge for next week. As easy as that. Right, guys, it is 7:30. It is time for me to get out of here and close things up for another day. And Just a Cup of Cheese says, ask your staff to ask the staff why selling so early as well. I can do that. So that is the challenge sorted for next week. Oh, Nigel has just come up. Make a bird box for the allotment. Can you remember that for next week? Or we're trying to, yeah. Remember that for the week after, Nigel. Remind us next week, because that would be a good one to do as well. But we've got the tomatoes here anyway. Right, guys, I think it is time to get out of here. And where are we? Yeah, right. It's time to. I'm not here next week, Nigel. Digwell or somebody else. Can you remember Nigel's suggestion and throw that in for the week after? Then you can see it. Anyway, right. It's time to get out of here because I'm rabbiting on a bit too much. We will be back again next Sunday at 6 p.m. As I said, the clocks change next Sunday. We might be an hour earlier, depending where you are in the world. Still be 6 o'clock in the UK. Please do send in as many photos as you can, because we do love seeing the photos. We'd like to see more photos and get people sharing that. If anybody has anything they think they want to discuss next week, send that in as well. My email address, richard@adventuregroundpodcast.co.uk. Well, guys, don't forget the Facebook group if you want to chat with some of the people in the group as well. It's a good little community we have going on there. Anyway, right, I'm rabbiting on too much. You take care, guys. I'll speak to you again next Sunday at 6.